Hi everyone. I've had a lot of requests for how do I RGB my Lian 11D. Well, it's a bit of a minefield. So it starts with a selection process. So what I'll do is I'll take everyone through with the handheld, and we'll have a look at the components that go into creating an RGB solution. You need to do it before you actually start building, and you need to be aware of the parts that you're selecting so that the end result is going to be achievable in the software, because the software will be part 2 of this little video tutorial, and it can be a bit of a minefield. So we'll start here and we'll get into some of the components. I've pulled the Lian apart. The first thing I'm going to start with is the choice of motherboard. So the motherboard I purchased, I think in 2019 at some stage, August, somewhere around there, and with a plan to RGB the entirety of it. When the Lian came along, I like the look of the actual case itself because it allows for just wonderful viewing of the components that are going into it. But with that comes what I call the bird's nest. Now I've had to pull this apart a little bit, it's not too bad, just to show some of the components. I'm going to start with the choice of fan. So I'm using choice 1, an Alphacool or a Lux Pro 2 digital RGB. So it's a German product, 120mm. It's a German product, but it is an aRGB. So basically digital aRGB is 5 volt. And I have a box of my beautiful filing system, a box of 5 volt stuff and a box of 12 volt stuff. EKWB uses quite a bit of 12 volt, but just on that, the water block is from EK. Spin this around. Let's have a look at that. That is 5 volt. So that's the 3-pin header for the RGB connector for the water block itself, for the LED part component of the water block. The fans, the Alphacools, all come with a daisy chain system where multiple fans can be plugged in to each other and then they come out at one point. At that point we then end up with a 3-pin header. 3-pin header. Oh, there's another 3-pin header. And that one there. So I ended up with I got 4. How many aRGB pins on a Z390 ASUS motherboard? 1. That led me to this little baby here. It is a Cooler Master addressable RGB splitter cable. So I'm using a 1:5 because I have 4 in the back of the Lian. They come in 3s as well, and they cater for a gigabyte. We're labelled with a 3-pin header there, an ASRock, an ASUS or an MSI, and they actually have the 3-pin in that format. Now, just to show you where this goes, I'll use the 3-pin on a modern day Gigabyte B550. So we have lots of headers. I'll just zoom into that point. There is a 3-pin for the aRGB, and there's a 4-pin for, say, the EKWB 12 volt. You can actually see upside down, but you can actually see the 12 volt notation at that point. So all we do is plug that into that. If I can get down low enough to get it straight. There we go. And we have 3 pins which then plug into your female connectors, which you've combined in your bird's nest. In this case I'm using a 5 because I actually have 1, 2, 3, 4 that I've got to cater for. So you can purchase a 3, that will do most, but in this case I have 7 fans, 3 up the top, 4, 5, 6, 7 in the Lian itself. There's the EKWB and we've also got an addressable header that's on the graphics card, which is 1 GB as well. There's one more thing I wanted to show everyone. How do you fit that many fans into a motherboard that doesn't have that many power connectors? So the power connectors, I use a deep cool hub. Here's the box here. It's an FH10. They are available in a 4 as well as a 10, and very handy. I just much prefer to keep all of my power in one section. I'll show you physically where that is. There's the deep cool there, and it just neatens everything up a little bit, depending on the case that you're using. The Lian has a splice down the bottom, but if you're running 6 or more fans, there's not enough space for all of it. So that's the power side of things. Right, so that's how we plug everything in. I'll put this 5-pin back in, make everything neat, start the PC up again, and then I'll take everybody through the software. The software is, well, it's unique, and depending on what you're using, just take a special note of my CPU block. It has a USB header that comes off of it, and that's the controller. So that's aRGB and the actual power mechanism for the Vision Aqua computer CPU block. I'll show you the software specifically for that as well, and the aRGB stuff. The RAM that I'm using is very important, especially with an ASUS motherboard. RGB on a RAM stick depends on what it is. In this case I'm using Dominator, which is Corsair Dominator Platinum, and I've got 64 gig there. They look very nice. I just like the actual look of the RAM itself. And this case was created for playing. So I bought 2 Z390 motherboards. The second one is a backup in case I blow this, and I wind them out. I just to probably learn a little bit more about overclocking in a modern day gaming PC. I wind them out and water cool them so that we can actually get more extreme voltages and temperatures inside a PC. Okay, I'll now get busy, put everything together, and we'll have a look at some software. All packed up, set up and running. And now we'll start on software. Now, I'm using the handheld because I don't have a capture card, but basically I have a rule that you start with the software that comes with the motherboard itself. So after many updates of Armoury Crate, I finally got the majority of it working. However, that doesn't mean that your version or your motherboard is going to be compatible with the version of RGB software that comes with the proprietary software is what I'm trying to say. So update the software to the latest. If you are using software that automatically updates, what I recommend you do is go to the actual proprietary website, in this case ASUS, and download the latest Armoury Crate. As far as the RGB goes, to demonstrate this, I've got everything on a static color at the moment. We've got 1, 2, items, and all addressable headers. Remembering I had one plug into one addressable header, coming out to a splitter cable and plugging everything else in. It depends on how many connections you have on your motherboard as to how you configure your software. But in this case, all I did was select the Aurora Sync compatible devices for sync, select all, which is the motherboard, and the addressable headers on the motherboard. Go to the Aurora effects, select static, and then I've gone over to color at that point here, selected color, and then I've chosen a color that I like. I'm a blue man, but that's up to you what choice you choose there. For the demo, I'm just going to select red as a contrast, go OK. Then we'll have a look at the actual PC. Oh, so the RAM hasn't changed. The CPU block from Aqua Computer hasn't changed, but we've got a dramatic effect on the fans, everything that's plugged into that addressable header. So what to do next? Excuse me. I'll minimize that. I'll leave it open. I'll minimize that. And the first one I'll do is Aqua Suite. Now, Aqua Suite is from Aqua Computer, and it is without a doubt the most comprehensive piece of software for the CPU blocks themselves. The Germans do not do things by halves. I'll click on the actual Vision CPU block. There's all sorts of things that we can do here. So the display, I created a DC builds bitmap and use that to come in the actual Vision printout. I do that with all of my builds for my customers. Just gives you a little bit of a final touch to it. It does temperature as well, but the RGB is what we're interested in. And the RGB is going to be for just the Vision itself. I've selected a breathing effect, and I'll go over to red. Click on save for that. And then we'll go back and we'll have a look at the CPU block itself. Excuse the reflection there. I can't do much about the daylight. And that's the CPU block done. But RAM. Okay, so Dominator, Platinum, Corsair typically isn't friendly with, well, anything really. And IQ is probably the least preferred software that I like to use for any RGB stuff, but I will use it for this case. So in the case of the actual lighting effects, here's the static color that I've pre-selected on all dims, so all 4 dims, and you can see that you can actually have shading for different parts of the RGB. So you can have multiple colors on one strip and then cross them, create your own patterns. So it is, once again, comprehensive software. It's just that it took around about 3 or 4 updates before I could be completely happy with it. I'm just going to go over to here, select static color, and we'll go back and we'll have a look at the software. Sorry, the actual LEDs on the software, and it's come in as red as well. Okay, so just to summarize that, 3 bits of software. First one, depending on your motherboard, Armory Crate. If it's gigabyte, you can use aRGB Fusion. The next one for the CPU block was Aqua Suite, excellent piece of software, and then Corsair's IQ. And that's it from the software perspective. I just wanted to add one more point. RGB can be fairly comprehensive if you don't get it right. So let's say we have an example that I've got coming up with a client of mine in Sydney who had a leftover server. He was updating his server, and the motherboard's around about 10 years old. I'll just show you now. Here's the actual base board itself. It's a dual Xeon server board, SC2600, or S2600 CP, I should say. This board has they're tremendous. They'll go forever. I've got some of these running still to this day. And what I'm doing with this is creating a 10 fan nightmare. But what to do with a motherboard that doesn't have any aRGB or digital RGB headers on it. I'll show you what to do in part 2. I'll create another tutorial after I've uploaded the build, this build here. It's going to be a busy Christmas because we're just coming out of COVID and border control. So I hope to get this finished by January. And then after that, I'll actually do an RGB tutorial on this board itself as well.